Thank you to GameWare Create for being a channel partner. Looking for a Kickstarter game you missed or 3D printed minis? GameWare Create has a huge selection available, all at a fair price. Use the link in the description below to check out all that GameWare Create has to offer. What's up, Rockstars? Today I have a great opportunity to talk to you guys today about something I feel is very important for this industry and for us as consumers and for developing companies as well. This is something that definitely needs to be discussed, and that's just how expensive this hobby is and how expensive it actually should be. So we're going to discuss reality versus what should happen. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. It is through their financial support that this channel is possible. And that's because I take no money from any game developer so that you know I give you my honest opinion, not my wallet's opinion. If you appreciate that and you can, even $1 a month, there is a Patreon link down below and I greatly appreciate it. Trust me, it helps and it adds up. And with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and dive right in. All I'm going to say before that is, even if you didn't click that Patreon link, that's totally fine. I get it. Just leave a like on the video to let me know that you found this video helpful or insightful or entertaining in some way. I greatly appreciate it. And let me know what you think down below as well. In fact, I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are now before I say something, and then after the video. Let me know if it made you think at all. Let me know if it, changed your mind. I would love to hear that. I'd love to have that conversation with you guys. You guys know I always appreciate that, and I'll be down there too. You guys know how I roll. All right, now let's actually dive into it. Now, before I talk about any specific game, know that I'm only using examples and I'm not trying to call out this game or that game. There are games I'm covering that I have not played, games that I would not play, games that I have bought and played and enjoyed, okay? So I'm not like trying to point fingers or cast blame or do anything like that. I'm just trying to talk about specific situations that I notice, that I've noticed over time, and kind of my feelings and how they've evolved and possible solutions. So let's go ahead and talk about this. My main statement that I'm going to try and back up right now is this. Board games can be very expensive, especially on Kickstarter, but in general, they're just getting more expensive, and I don't think they need to be. I think developers are being either greedy or lazy or both when it comes to the price of their games, hoping to wow us in other factors instead of being anything that actually helps us as consumers. So let me go ahead and just also mention that I've talked briefly in the past about buying expensive games, and I've talked about that too, and this is kind of an evolution from I'm the one that kind of started that talk around the easy pay system on Chronicles of Drunagar, where if you don't have enough money and this is a super expensive game, you can just pay monthly payments for it to afford it because they're getting so expensive. So let's talk about that expense now, and I'll talk you through kind of my reasoning, what I've been thinking of. And we're going to start here with Aridia, I don't know how to pronounce it, I apologize. Rydia, R-Y-D-I-A is a Final Fantasy character, I know, so I tend to say Aridia, but then that sounds weird to me, so whatever it is, just know that it's freaking expensive. Now, if you look at this, it's saying that they are charging for the base game. In other words, this is the cheapest you can play this game. If you want to play this game, this is the lowest amount you have to pay. $165. And they're saying that's actually $75 off, that the retail price they suggest is $240 for the base game. There isn't a possible way to lower that cost, except there is. If you notice here, you have these pre-painted player miniatures. Every single player miniature comes pre-painted. Yes, that costs extra. Yes, that adds money to it. Yes, that probably adds value to a lot of people who like to see it pre-painted. But that is definitely adding to the cost here. And guess what? 50 pre-painted monster miniatures. Every single miniature in this game comes pre-painted, and you are paying for that in the base cost. There is no ability to not pay for that. Compare that to Dragori Games and their Tenaris Adventures campaign, where they released both a painted version and a non-painted version. Or any game from Awakened Realms that has a sun drop or a non-sun drop. In other words, it's not forced into the core game so that the core game is cheaper. In other words, you don't have to pay for something you don't want. But if you have the money and you're willing to pay for it and you want to, you can pay that extra money. That's the difference here, is they're forcing that in here. So Aridia is as expensive as it is in large part thanks to dozens and dozens, 50 pre-painted monster miniatures and all the player miniatures and their iterations all pre-painted as well. I'm not going to get into card count. I'm not going to get into the content. I think the game looks awesome. Okay, so I'm not saying this game doesn't look freaking killer, because trust me, it does. But when I see that they think that the base cost should be $240, I feel like stuff should be taken out and added otherwise. In other words, doesn't need to have all of that in it. It can't. Will the game be lesser if you don't have pre-painted minis? Why are you forcing that as the bare minimum? To where if people would love to play your game and love to experience it, but can't afford $300 at retail once they add tax and all that stuff, or shipping if they're buying it online, then they just don't get to play the game at all because you wanted pre-painted minis in there. I feel like companies, and I'm going to move on to other ones, I feel like companies are trying to stand out. Kickstarter is very, very crowded and very busy and very big, and these big games with these big campaigns with 100+ scenarios, as Frosthaven advertises, and, a 600-page campaign, and, 100+ hour replayable campaign, and all this stuff that they overstuff these with just to be different, just to one up the competition, just to be bigger and better than everybody else. Yes, you might have another adventure game, but Aridia has pre-painted miniatures. Yes, you might have a game that's a cool campaign, but we have this many hours in our campaign versus you're that many hours in that campaign, which means that many more minis and that many more game tiles and that many more cards and that many more monster stats and that many more delays when you have to actually make that insanely big game. I think that's what's happening here. And the problem is that it's adding to the cost. In a time where shipping is already insane, delays are already bigger than they ever have been. It's harder to produce something overseas in China right now because of outbreaks, because of COVID. It's harder to ship something out of there, so you end up paying to have it stored there while you're just trying to bid for a ship to get out, and then you ended up shipping to other places and all that stuff. The business cost alone to these big campaigns is massive. Massive. And I worry that not only is it not sustainable for consumers, in other words, for us to keep up with backing games that are not, it used to be 90, then it was 100, then it was 120, then it was 150. Now we're at 165 for an acceptable core box game experience. That not only is it expensive for us, but it's going to end up costing them. I don't think it's sustainable. You can't just keep going bigger and badder ever. It doesn't work that way. You can't just, there has to be a limit. There has to be a time where you're like, you know what? This doesn't make sense to make games like this. Maybe we'll see that. Maybe we're not. Let's move on to another one. Descent is another recent one. Now, I know this says $175. That's the MSRP. And I know that you can find it online for the cheap price of $140. You might be able to get the steal of $130. Now, why is Descent Legends of the Dark so much more expensive than second edition? Why is it that the core box of Descent has now almost doubled in price? If you paid $90 at retail for Descent second edition, which like a lot of people did, you're now paying $180. It's literally double. It's twice as much. Why is that? Is it because there's a much larger campaign, or there's way more minis, or there's more 3D tokens? More and more I'm seeing this, and I might have another video on 3D tokens or 3D terrain, I should say. 3D terrain, and kind of my feelings as they've evolved on it, because they have evolved. But what I will say is I'm seeing more and more games with these 3D terrain again to stand out. Why does this stand out so much more? Because it's not just another app-driven app. You've seen that a million times. It's not just Descent. You've seen that a million times. You own 2 copies of it. I don't have it here anymore. You still have 2 copies of Descent second edition right there. It's not that, it's standing out because it's not only that, but it's also these big Hips minis, which Hips, by the way, cost like 4 times as much to make. Like, it's way more expensive than PVC. Is it 4 times as good? No. Is it better? Yes. But again, that core box now is getting more expensive because they're making fancy Hips miniatures. And then that 3D terrain, that again is forced on there. It's not just buy the 3D terrain expansion. It's, if you want to play Descent, you have to buy the 3D terrain, which means you have to spend more. We're constantly trying to stand out and constantly trying to one up each other. That the competition's getting to the point where it's not affordable for us, the consumers. That's the issue. And again, I don't think it's long-lived as affordable for game companies as well. The market cannot just go more and more expensive and get smaller and smaller as more and more people have to drop out of playing these games. If you want a dungeon crawler at this point, there's few and far between dungeon crawlers that are remotely considered cheap at this point. It's just getting worse, not better, as they try to stand out, as they try to one-up themselves, as they try to put the bells and whistles so that you back for the bells and whistles, probably ignoring the meat and potatoes. So, anyway, Descent, another example of that. Even Judgment. I loved Judgment. Judgment is a fantastic game. It's really, really fun. And they have a neoprene stitched matte core box. Again, I ask why. Why not put a game board? Will your game be worse as a game board? Now, I can understand. And I think Judgment really wanted this. Wanting a premium product. And I get that. And I understand allusions to other industries like car industries. Well, you got the fancy sports car and you got the fancy, or the commuter car, and then you got the budget car. And I understand that. But I think we're stopping the budget car. We're stopping the economy car so that everybody's trying to be that luxury car. And I don't think that's a good idea. It's fine to have those, but also I want people to realize that they're choosing this. You could put the 3D terrain as an expansion and just use tokens. You could put a regular game board in Judgment and not put a neoprene mat stitched in there. You're choosing to make that. You could make Aridia without painted minis. You're choosing to put that in there. They are purposely making this core box as stuffed and expensive as possible to stand out. And then the more expensive it is means the higher they can raise it. You want to know why Aridia is at over almost $1 million? Well, one of the reasons is because, look at that, almost at $1 million, is because first of all, it's made by a developer known to make a great game. It looks awesome and it's freaking expensive. That third one is the issue. Make a great game. Be well known. That's fine. Charge a whole bunch of money for the core box. That's the part I have a problem with. That was a weird number, but you get what I'm saying. That's the one where I'm like, yeah, better games. Yeah, good development. Yeah, more expensive on purpose. Rah, rah. Like, I can't get behind that. I can't do it anymore. The more I see this, the more it bothers me. And here we have a video on it. One of my favorite game systems, the River system based off Conan. Here is that. And as you can see, I spent plenty of money here. So I'm not saying these games are bad. I'm not saying I wouldn't back them too. I'm right there with you guys. Right there with you. However, this was, in a time, 140 was a lot. This was above average. The average was, you were just starting to see $120 boxes, especially like from like Come On and stuff like that. It was abnormal. Normally it was at about 100 at this point. It was a little bit higher than the 90 that I think I started out in Kickstarter with, and it's been upping ever since. But 140 was like 140. But you got 162 miniatures. 54 stretch goals. You got two, this couldn't even fit in one box. This was 2 boxes of that. I love that. I get it. I checked every single day on this campaign. Every single day. I got every expansion. I love it. I get it. But did the core box need to have all of this? Did it? Now, I think there's extremes, right? A lot of times I talk about, like when I was unboxing Bloodborne, it had all the small packages. I was like, well, that's retail, right? That's Arcadia Quest, they always do that too with like the hero packs that come with like 2 or 3 heroes. The reason you have 12 of those is because in retail, you want those smaller incremental add-ons. And so I'm not saying you necessarily want that. There is a benefit, I think, of grouping things together, especially in like a big box expansion, so you can get like a proper campaign and not just, like penny and dime everything. So you don't need to go the extreme that way, but I don't feel like you need to go the extreme that way. I think Batman Gotham City Chronicles would have been just as fun with 100 minis. That's 62 minis less. 62 of them less. I still think it would have been a great game. And maybe it could have even gone a little bit lower than 140. So is that the benefit? Do we want to support something that just keeps going more and more and more? And what can we do about it? Well, I did want to point out something here. And Trespass Odyssey. So if you notice here, right there, is the prelude. That's what they gave every reviewer of this game. It was a prequel to the story, so it didn't ruin the story for you. It can introduce you to kind of the big concepts, so it kind of guided you through that. And guess what? It was really cool. And guess what? They decided to sell it at a cheaper cost. So instead of that $130, which again is expensive, $130 is a lot of money. Does the core game need to be that way? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not saying every game needs to be, especially when it comes to like a big boss battler. Yeah, maybe it doesn't need to be that big. You know, maybe it's just, that's just the cost of making these boss battlers that have more than like 3 bosses in it or something. I'm not saying that. There's genres and categories for everything, and it can be expensive too. But they didn't say, you know what, you either pay $130 or you don't get to experience Trespass Odyssey. Goodbye, peasant. Come back with more money. Get a better job. Go play some cheapo game. Good luck on the used market. Maybe you can play it in 10 years when people are, you know, selling it for cheap because they don't care anymore. Maybe then you can get it. Or do you do something like this? Maybe you can offer a prelude for $70. It allows somebody, and this is key too. And because, you know, again, maybe it allows them to that. Look how 54 backers. 54 backers. They now have an entire new SKU, an entire new packaging process, shipping, organization for 54 backers. Now, obviously, that a lot of $1 backers may upgrade to that in the PM. We don't really get to see a lot of insight into that, but that almost proves otherwise of what I'm saying, right? And I get that. The same with offering standees, right? Oathsworn. I didn't pull this up, but Oathsworn famously offered standees and miniatures. I don't know how many times I see a game like Batman or something like that with a lot of minis, or even a Trespass Odyssey or something like that, where people are like, Primal was a big one too. It's like, these are big, giant minis. Why not put standees in there? Make a cheaper option for those that don't want to spend so much or that can't afford so much. No judging here. You know, maybe they're just trying to be more financially responsible. Maybe they have a limited budget, and you going standee means they can get an entire other game in their category for that. Is it worth it? Well, as a consumer, obviously more choice is better. Yes, always 100% give options. There's nothing wrong with giving options. It costs us nothing. It does cost companies though, and I know a lot of you developers watch this stuff, so I get it. There's a cost to having an add-on or having another SKU. Logistically and just factually, it does. The development time, all that kind of stuff goes into that. So, is it worth it for 54 backers? Morally, maybe. Financially, probably not. Would those 54 backers have dropped down, or would they have upgraded to the 130? Don't know. Would they have allowed the Kickstarter to go up higher? I don't know. And I don't know the answer either. That's why I would love to hear what you had to say. You heard my kind of 2 pieces here. I think there are ways you can either limit the scope of your game or limit the component quality to have a kind of bare minimum that can be upgraded. As in, like, offering, hey, you want that neoprene mat? Here it is as an add-on. You want that 3D terrain? Here it is as an add-on. Pimp out your game. But we're not going to require you to pimp out your game to play the core game. The core game will be as available as it can be to as many people as possible, and that means being price conscious. And I'd love to hear what you have to say from both sides. So if you're a developer, feel free to comment. I would love to, or email me. I would love to have a chat with you about this and understand more the process of standing out in today's day. Is this why you think Descent has 3D terrain, just to stand out, to make a big thing? Would it have been as impactful if they had shown it and it was the same Descent with a flat board with an app? Or was it that wow factor where we saw it all displayed out there? I just walked into a game store just yesterday and they had it on display, and it looked darn impressive and definitely caught my eye. Is it worth it to stand out, to have so much content and all these upgrades and minis that change with how things, how you progress, and having it all pre-painted? Is that what's you need to stand out? Are you guys finding that? Do you guys think that? Do you guys think it's sustainable? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. So that's my thoughts. I don't know all the answers. I don't even know if this is truly a problem. I feel like it is. I feel like we're getting more and more expensive, and right now there's nothing stopping it. There is no finish line to that. It just keeps going. Who's going to stand out from Aridia? Well, I don't know, but you might have $180 even more epicer game with even more pre-painted minis and even more of this and even more of that. I'm not sure where it stops. Let me know. All right, take care, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you later.